Most of the conversations that we have on a day-to-day basis, I'm sure you would agree, are not transformational. We talk to our friends, our family members, we talk to people on the phone, salespeople, we talk to people at the counter at the store, at the supermarket, wherever it is that you talk to people. Most conversations that we have as human beings are not really transformational. Now, on the other hand, I think that most people have had the experience of either having a communication with someone and having that person change their life for the better based on that conversation, or perhaps you've been on the receiving end of that, where someone said something to you or you communicated back and forth with someone, and because of that communication, because of that conversation, your life changed course for the better. And we're all probably really grateful when those things happen, because this communication can open and transform our lives. And so in today's video, I want to share with you 7 criteria of transformational conversations that explain why some conversations are transformational and some are not. Now, not all conversations necessarily should be transformational, but to have the idea about when, where, and why, and how to make your conversations be more transformational in the context where it would be important is probably a useful skill for you to have if you're here watching my channel or you're hanging out anywhere where I'm sharing these videos. So needless to say, the skills of transformational conversations are the core skill of coaches. So if you're a coach, then you're really going to enjoy this content, I imagine. But I imagine in my mind that all communications benefit from coaching. And so because I believe that coaching is the ultimate form of communication, and so if you're a parent, then these skills are going to be useful for you to coach your children into becoming independent and interdependent, healthy, functioning adults. If you are a salesperson, that these skills will be useful for helping your leads to become potential customers. If you are a manager or a leader, that these transformational conversation skills will be really useful to help you to unleash the performance of the people who report to you. So in every area of your life, if you're a friend and you've got a friend who's going through some difficulties, or maybe you're going through some difficulties and the conversations that you're running in your head with yourself are holding you back from making the transformations and changes and opening you up to the things that you want in your life, these skills are useful in all conversations, not only in formal coaching sessions, even in the conversations that we're having with ourselves in our heads on a day-to-day basis. So I imagine if you're still here at this point of the video, you're ready to dive into the 7 criteria for transformational conversation. So the first criteria that I have here is that most conversations on a day-to-day basis are too shallow. So, hey, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Great. What'd you do last weekend? Oh, I did this. What did you do last weekend? And what are you going to do? Now, most of the conversations that we have with strangers especially, but even with acquaintances, friends, and family members, are really at the surface level of talking about the environment and speaking about behavior. And it's really shallow. And if we want to have conversations that are transformational, they need to go deeper than just the everyday, daily, behavioral and environmental types of questions. We need to go deeper into the person's beliefs, their values, their decisions, their beliefs about themselves, what's significant and meaningful to them in their lives, what are their challenges, what are their fears, what's holding them back, what are their dreams. I think you get the point at this, at this point of this video, is that most conversations are too shallow. If you want to have transformational conversations, you need to take the conversation deeper. And one of the skills, if I just give you a little nugget in a kind of a headline format, the skill of meta questioning, META-questioning, is a powerful skill that you can use to take your conversations deeper. I've got probably, I don't even know if I have a video on meta questioning. I'll probably make one later on, next week or so on that topic, but I definitely have some articles, and you can just kind of Google meta questioning and see what comes up there if you're interested in learning how to take the conversations deeper. So that's number 1. Most conversations are too shallow, which prevents them from being transformational. Number 2 is that there needs to be an environment of support, caring, almost like an unconditional positive regard will greatly increase the probability that your conversations will be transformational. And that means that if the person is at all feeling defensive or unsafe or non-supported by you, well, then they're not going to share their truths, their meaningful and significant internal stuff with you. And this also applies in terms of not having this safe environment, this state of unconditional positive regard. It also applies with the conversations that you have with yourself in your head. And so a lot of times in our heads, we think a thought and then we kind of judge ourselves for thinking that thought, or we have an emotion or do a behavior or do a habit, and then we kind of hate on ourselves for having said those things, thought those things, done those things in the past, and so on. And when we do that to ourselves, it creates this kind of separation within ourselves where part of ourselves is doing the best that it can, and the other part of ourselves is shaming it, beating it up, judging it, so on and so forth. And when that happens, the environment does not become healthy for us to explore, to speak our truths, to become more whole and to integrated within ourselves. And so again, the second important criteria for holding transformational conversations is to have this sense or state of unconditional positive regard. And that really speaks to your state of being able to unconditionally accept, appreciate, other people. But again, even if you are coaching someone else, communicating with someone else, it's about unconditionally accepting and appreciating yourself, because if you're not able to go there with yourself, well, your client's going to pick up on that consciously or subconsciously, and they're only going to be able to go as deep as you've gone with yourself, which speaks to the importance of applying your tools and skills, your coaching tools and skills, NLP tools and skills, neurosemantics tools and skills, or whatever modality that you practice, applying them to yourself first so you can be congruent when working with the people that you're working with. So that's number two, creating an environment of unconditional positive regard. Number three, another reason why most of our conversations are not really transformational in day-to-day life is because they're two-sided. So it's, hey, how are you? Good, how are you? And so the conversation flip-flops back and forth between the one person and the other person, which again, that prevents it from going deep, like I said in the last point. And also it prevents it from being focused in on one person, which links into the next one here, which is that most conversations are not transformational because they are not focused on a particular outcome or objective. And so the conversation can kind of float all over the place, and there's no real boundaries as to what is relevant within this conversation and what is not relevant. So it's important, if you want to hold transformational conversations, to have it be one-sided, meaning that this is about speaking to them and going deeper. So it's not, hey, how are you? Good, hey, how are you? It's, hey, how are you? Good, what specifically is good about how you are, and what do you believe about being good? I'm just giving a vague example, but we're going to go deep with one person. Will allow it to be potentially transformational. And then we need to figure out what's the outcome of this conversation. What do they want to achieve? What do they want to transform? What is the aim of this conversation? Because if we don't have an objective, a target, then there really is no way to judge whether or not something is relevant or irrelevant to the conversation. But again, for conversations to be transformational, they need to be laser focused on the other person's objective. What do they want? Because if it's what we want for them, then we will basically violate the second criteria that I shared here. They're not going to feel unconditionally safe and cared for. And they're not going to feel safe to speak their truth because they feel like you are either you have a hidden agenda or a blatantly obvious agenda, and you're not really listening to what's important to them and what they want to move towards, which then will shut down the potentiality of this conversation being transformational. So that's number 3 and 4. Transformational conversations are one-sided and they're focused on a specific outcome, and that's the topic of this conversation that we're moving towards. That's the objective. Number 5 of 7 is that most conversations go too fast. And again, this applies with our conversations with other people, but it also applies to the conversations within our own head. A lot of times when I am supervising coaches and and consultants in their coaching and consulting sessions, one of the things I see is that they go way too fast. And what that means is that they let the client talk way too much to the point where there's so much on the table, meaning that the client talks about this and this and this and this and this, that now as the coach or as the facilitator of the potentially transformational conversation, well, what do I grab onto? They put too much out there. And so it's real important to slow down the conversation. Again, also within your head, is our thoughts kind of tend to zip around when we're having non-transformational conversations with ourselves. And slowing them down and just going one thought at a time and really listening to what was said, slowing down the conversation, interrupting, and asking questions to deepen what was said in a little bit. It's better to take a little piece and go deeper on it than to take lots of shallow pieces and have them all on the table and then deciding which one are we going to grab onto and go deeper within, which door are we going to knock on, to use that metaphor. So number 5, most conversations are not transformational because they go too fast, and one of the ways we can help conversations be transformational is to slow them down. Number 6 of 7, most conversations are too abstract or vague, meaning that people are talking just in generalities. Well, while speaking in generalities is nice, it's okay, it's how we hear what someone else believes and values, for the conversation to be transformational, it really needs to be grounded in some sort of experience or details, because when the other person, again, if I'm imagining that you're the person facilitating these transformational conversations, when that person is not grounded in details, then you're having a real nice intellectual conversation, but it's not really going to change their life because we're not talking about any specific life experience that these generalities were formed from. And again, this applies with the conversations in your head. And so if you're thinking in generalities, but you're not talking about when specifically did this happen, what specific experiences am I referring to from which I drew these generalizations from, then we're not really going to be able to change anything real. We can change ideas, have philosophical understandings, and really nice theoretical conversations, conceptual conversations. But for conversations to be transformational, we really need to ground them in specific experiences and specific details about when, where, with whom, what really are we talking about, and not just speaking in kind of fluffy abstractions. So that's number 6. The last one that I have here, number 7, criteria for facilitating transformational conversations, is that transformational conversations have to induce emotional states in someone. It has to get their physiology, their body, and their emotions engaged and involved. Now, their caveat to that one is that they have to be engaged and involved physiologically and emotionally in useful and resourceful states that facilitate them to solve their problems and facilitate the conversation, this transformational conversation, to proceed and to continue. And so, well, no matter when you're talking to someone, most of the time you're inducing and affecting their emotional states. But when we're doing that, it may or may not be the states that are relevant or useful to that laser-focused outcome that we talked about in step number 4 here. And so we really want to make sure that it's not just an intellectual conversation, that it's actually influencing this person's physiology emotionally, and physiologically engaging their body and their emotions to elicit the emotions that, again, are resourceful, number 1, for allowing this conversation to proceed and be potentially transformational. For example, that unconditionally accepted, unconditionally appreciated state. It's useful, feeling supported, feeling listened to, feeling cared for, and so on. So we want that states in the client to allow this conversation to proceed and to continue to move along towards this laser-focused outcome. But also we want to be inducing states in them that are resourceful for them to help them to overcome their internal objections, their internal blockages, their internal interferences, because that's where conversations really get transformational, is when they induce themselves, or we facilitate them to induce themselves into the states that allow them to overcome their interferences, overcome their blockages. Now all of a sudden they have this experience of having a transformation and having a breakthrough. But without the other 6 criteria, we really need all of these 7 criteria for the most part to be present, which will greatly increase the probability that our conversations are going to be transformational. One of the things that we say, in neurosemantics is that, well, coaching is just a series of conversations. And again, coaching is the ultimate form of communication. So it doesn't really matter if you're just coaching your kids or coaching your direct reports at work or coaching your colleagues or your friends or your leads in your business or whoever it may be. So Coaching is really just a series of conversations. We're hoping that the coaching conversations are transformational. That's what sets them apart from everyday chats and communications that we have with people. Not every conversation will be transformational, but when you introduce these 7 criteria into your conversations, it greatly increases the probability that they will be. Whether or not your client experiences a transformation, that's not a well-formed outcome for you to set, to have every conversation be transformational, because there's no guarantee. It doesn't fully depend on you. It depends on the other person involved as well, their life, their inner world, their circumstances, where they are in their life. However, these 7 things will greatly increase the probability that it will be. So I hope you found this video valuable. If you did, remember to like. Feel free to share this with anyone that you think would benefit from this conversation, these coaching skills here. I'm curious if there's any criteria that I missed, or there's something that you'd like to add to this, or any questions or comments or realizations. Of course, always feel free to share them in the comments section around this video. And if you'd like to find more information like this, then I invite you to subscribe to my channel on YouTube, or to like my Facebook page at The Perception Academy. My name is Jason Schneider. If you don't know me, I teach coaching skills to individuals who are either aspiring coaches, already coaches, or people who are interested in self-coaching, to help them to unleash the highest and best of human potential, really starting with yourself and then spreading that out to the other people around you. So again, I hope you found this video valuable. I hope to see you in a future video, in the comments section, and perhaps in a future course. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and wishing you many, many more transformational conversations in your future.